I don't know if you can tell, I'm a little tanner. Also, if you take a close look, do I look more American? I should. I swam in the Gulf of America.
And I'm proud to be an American.
That's right, I just got back from Florida. I attended the International Restoration Convention and Industry Expo put on by the Restoration Industry Association, the RIA. In relationship to that, the question we want to ask, maybe provide some insights for, is what is the RIA? Bunch of nerds. And if it's valuable, should I join? What is the RIA doing, and are they doing a good job? But we're going to ask some of those questions and see if we can provide some insights that might be helpful.
Discussions for the first time about the right thing.
Welcome back to the DYOJO Podcast. I'm your host, John Isaacson. Like you, I'm a contractor. I'm also an author and an educator.
Hi, everybody out there, DYOJO Nation. This is the Global Watchdog, Pete Consigli.
Here at the DYOJO Podcast, our mission is simple: to help contractors shorten their dang learning curve.
DYOJO Podcast.
Whether you're growing your skills or your business, we work hard to ensure that each episode will provide value to our loyal listeners.
It should also be noted that the views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization, company, or sponsor.
You have entered the DYOJO Podcast.
That's right, I just got back from Florida.
Ba-dum-ba.
I initially flew into West Palm on the Atlantic side, and with the help of my good friend Gordy and Mrs. P and Miranda, was able to dip my toes in the Atlantic Ocean. I'll report it was warm, starting to get a little bit humid. The water wasn't cold, but wasn't warm. It was nice. I didn't really feel, we had a lot that we were doing with the Restoration Industry Association convention and trade show, so it was more kind of fit that in before the event. And then after RIA, I was able to visit the I guess it'd be the west coast of Florida, the Gulf of America side, with my friend Pete Consigli, the restoration watchdog.
Hi, everybody out there, DYOJO Nation.
Pete Consigli, the Global Watchdog.
Global Watchdog.
In that water, it wasn't even a very warm day for Florida, but the water was warm. And I didn't even bring my swim trunks. I was like, when am I going to have this opportunity again? It might not be for a while. So I had to swim. I more than dipped my toes. I got into the water in the Gulf of America. So if I look more American, please don't hate me. I attended the International Restoration Convention and Industry Expo put on by the Restoration Industry Association, the RIA. We continued our tradition from last year of trying to meet a contractor from every state, picked up some new states like New Hampshire, and with the help of CNR, we formalized that into what we called the 50-50 challenge, encouraging people to get out of their bubbles, meet new people.
How would I help you out here? We are talking about the brand new 50-50 challenge.
The 50-50 Challenge.
That is being launched between the DYOJO and CNR Magazine. We are super excited.
So here's a quick slideshow of the people I met and the fun I had at the event. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see these pictures. If you're listening, you're going to get some nice music, but you can go back. It's also a YouTube short on the DYOJO page. obviously we had a ton of fun, met a lot of new faces, and got to connect with a lot of old friends. Before we dive further into our current topic, I want to just promote an episode that's coming up, something we've been working on in a new way that we're expanding the efforts of the DYOJO podcast. In an upcoming episode of the DYOJO podcast, we're doing a few things. Number one, we're taking our cameras on site, which has been a learning process, so bear with us as we continue to learn how to do this. Big kudos in this episode to Taylor and Dom Rivas and their team at H2O down in Lacey, Washington. Their story is not all that different from a lot of our listeners' stories.
Yes.
You've built a strong business in a very small market.
Tiny market, yeah.
The ups and downs of starting off on a real rocket trajectory, meeting various obstacles like these.
We have been burned by referring parties. We have been burned by partners. We have been burned by mentors, employees.
What the listener will get from this interview is the starting of a business.
So we've kind of come full circle a couple times, you know.
All the obstacles, the decline, especially in that period in 2020 where there was so much that was outside of our control as contractors and business people.
We just really gave it a hard shot this last go around.
And then that steady growth into selling the business and being part of the mergers and acquisitions prevalent in our market.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
It is
Rooter to the tutor.
I mean, it is like very intimidating.
Hope that you enjoy this first of many in this new format that we're trying out.
Any kind of good outcome, it has to come with some kind of crazy sacrifice.
Yeah.
And we feel like we definitely put that sacrifice in.
Yeah.
DYOJO Podcast. Over and out.
Thank you for entertaining that somewhat advertisement, just informing you of what's coming up in an upcoming episode of the podcast. So back to our current topic. So it brings up the question, what is the RIA and should I join? What is a trade association? Every trade has an association of some sort. Some are better organized and better at advocating for their members than others. We've addressed a lot of what is a trade association, what is the RIA as a trade association in prior episodes leading up to this event. One thing I think that was brought up that is really valuable by Mark Springer is the commitment to a code of ethics. We hear, even locally in our efforts here to gather, contractors saying, man, I'm going against bad actors or people that are, it's two ways. You got people they feel are writing inflated estimates that don't reflect the scope of work that needs to be done, or you have people writing lowball estimates that, again, don't reflect the scope of work that needs to be done. I think part of that in relationship to the code of ethics is letting the structure speak. So it's not uncommon that we have variances in price, but these variances in scope a lot of times come down to education, understanding what's going on at the job site, the experience to properly present that scope of work to the customer, and if insurance is involved. And so that dedication to a code of ethics, to learning how to do things right, to getting the proper education. Let's just look at the current code of ethics, which they mentioned is part of the process, maybe looking at those and updating those from 2006. But as they stand, we subscribe to the following principles in our relationships with customers, employees, and business associates. To treat our customers and their property with care and respect.
Can I inspect your home?
Should be a no-brainer, but again, that has contractors working from the same standpoint. It's something that consumers can be confident in, and insurers need to do the same. Let the structure speak. To provide professional service in accordance with high standards of practice that will, where possible, restore the customer's property to its pre-damaged or pre-soiled condition. We big advocates for that. What we talk about, the DYOJO standard, I think helps training our employees, communicating to our customers, and also pulling in the insurance companies to uphold the same. But, what our goal here is to restore the property to resemble pre-loss conditions with materials of like kind and quality. And if we can all agree upon that, we can create a better scope, allow the structure to speak for itself, and move forward, hopefully from the same page. To operate in a manner consistent with ethical principles and sound business practice. To be proficient in our work through ongoing participation in education and training. Even if you've been doing it a long time, a lot of the smartest people continue to educate themselves and their teams, and then trickle that down so it's not just the highest levels in the organization that have that education or designations, but everybody is working from a high level.
Educate yourself, you fool.
To provide our customers with accurate information concerning the scope of work required and its costs, maintaining a strict impartiality in our professional opinions. And that's important too. Again, I tried to capture this in an article in CNR magazine called Let the Structure Speak. I think it's of value to contractors, something that we can present to consumers is a baseline for our training. And then also saying, insurance company, insurance representative, are you looking at the evidence from the structure or just working from some set of guidelines that aren't a part of the contract you have with the customer and aren't reflected in the scope of work here on the site? So again, if you want a further explanation of what is RIA, what is a trade association, and those values, please listen to prior episodes. But one thing I wanted to drill down on is the code of ethics, because I think that is good for the listener, good for our industry, good for our local markets when we advocate for a shared set of principles, even just a baseline set of principles.
So you want to be a project manager? A project manager?
Something we'll be talking about in an upcoming episode is some alternative perspectives on recruiting, hiring, and developing project managers.
A project manager?
Many of those principles come out of our best-selling book.
So you want to be a project manager?
By John Isaacson. It's available on Amazon. We've actually added some updated information.
A project manager?
This is a great resource for owners who are hiring, training project managers who want to level up, and construction professionals who want to step into a project management role.
A project manager?
General mindset, habits that will help you be successful as a project manager. Some of you may be aware we have propertyrestorationhistory.com. It's been kind of a passion project to bring up pieces of restoration history and try to catalog a lot of those. My interest in history started, there was a shared article between Michelle Blevins and Pete Consigli.
Global Watchdog.
And it had pictures and some snippets of history, but it referenced this article from CNR Magazine 2007, the Founding Fathers article. Some people call it the Mount Rushmore. And it's Pete Consigli took who he thought would be the four faces on the Mount Rushmore of property restoration. Lloyd Weaver. Lloyd introduced the first specialty design porta-dryer for on-location wet carpet drying.
I worked for years getting the pressures correct on his carpet fan.
While that might not seem like much in today's sophisticated world, 35 years ago, this was written in 2007, founding fathers of restoration.
And then someone will ask him, how do you know when you have enough? He says, when you blow a fuse, you take one out.
Lloyd's methodology challenged the rug cleaning establishment and its in-plant wet carpet service. Lloyd also infuriated the fire restoration establishment as he encouraged carpet cleaners to diversify. And then there's Marty King, who's considered by many one of the driving forces of professionalizing our industry.
Cliff Zlotnick, who's also an industry icon, wrote 4 words: igniter of an industry.
Yeah,
he got this industry going into what it is today.
There's a reward named after him, the Marty L. King Lifetime Achievement Award with the RIA. And shout out to Norris Gerhardt, who is the winner of that distinguished award for this year at the RIA convention. Look up Marty King, look up that award and the list of people that have won. And Norris Gerhardt is still active in the industry. I believe he's the Executive Vice President of Regulatory Business Practice for North America for First Onsite. Unfortunately, Lloyd Weaver and Marty King have both passed. Cliff Zlotnick is one of the other faces. I got to know him or became aware of him through our industry's version of Microban, which we got to talk to him about on the DYOJO podcast. Say that the new guy coming in that really wants to try to learn to do things the right way. Do you have anything that might help that person to decipher when they're being fed a line of bull? This is bullshit.
Ask them to explain to you simply, how does it work? Imagine that I'm a 6-year-old. Explain it to me. And if these people cannot explain it to a 6-year-old, according to Albert Einstein, they don't understand it themselves.
And so he's still alive and active, comes to industry events and many of Pete Consigli's events, the winter break, which is coming up in February. Pete's already putting the plans for that together.
It's going to be fabulous.
And then Claude Blackburn, who's the founder of Dry Ease, a fellow Washingtonian. He's enjoying being retired. And so those 4, Marty King, Lloyd Weaver, Cliff Zlotnick, Claude Blackburn, are who Pete had. I'd encourage anyone involved in our industry, whether you're interested in history or not, to go check out that. But it's the 2007 Cleaning and Restoration, March 2007 Cleaning and Restoration, Founding Fathers of Restoration, by our good friend Pete Consigli.
Pete Consigli, Global Watchdog.
The 4 faces on Mount Restoration, taking the best of the past to build for the future. Mention that Lloyd Weaver and Marty King have passed. Another person that's been prolific in our industry is Jeff Bishop. He just recently passed away. I know news of that had hit while we were still at RIA. Clean Facts, in memoriam, Jeff Bishop. Jeff Cross, the editor there, did a really nice write-up. And I believe there's some links to some of Jeff's prior writings. I know when I was looking at history, there was an article that Jeff penned that was had a lot of insight on the industry. So just want to mention the passing of Jeff Bishop and encourage readers to look at Jeff Cross's article if you want to learn more about his contributions to the industry. That is our history moment for this episode. You can also check out propertyrestorationhistory.com. So we've answered what is RIA and should a contractor join. In sharing the history moment, that's a big piece of what I'm interested in when I go to RIA events and especially the annual convention, continuing to network and pick up pieces of history. And thankfully, people have started reaching out to me as well. I've been in the industry since about 2002, I think early 2000s, maybe 2005. I think I remember going to a convention and at that time not really feeling like it was something that was valuable to our business. And so hadn't really engaged or been back until 2020. It was going to be in Louisiana. I was really interested in going to Louisiana. That's a state I haven't visited. What really piqued my interest was the AGA, the Advocacy and Government Affairs Committee.
This is not a game, cupcake!
A lot of what Mark Springer had been saying, who was the current president.
Discussions for the first time about the right thing.
The content that Ed Cross was behind, how they were starting to bring in other stakeholders in the industry into those conversations, starting with Xactimate, Xactware. To me, that is that representation, collaboration, advocacy that I think is really important for an association. There are, under that AGA banner, there's task force, and I know there's like the pricing task force, which I've participated on and helped with. And then the legislative task force, I think that's something that's really important for us, local, regional, national level. So just to be aware, out of that, I think something that's really exciting to keep an eye on, the RIA submitted a request for an NAICS code. It's number 624231 for emergency restoration services. We get lumped in as property restoration contractors with the construction industry.
What would you say you do here?
Distinct skill set, training, certification, best practices.
Restoration machines!
So another item that the RIA is working on, getting an NAICS code.
I'm feeling this.
Which will help distinguish our industry from just an add-on service or some other service within the trades. RIA is proud to announce the formal submission of a request to the federal government for the establishment of a new 6-digit NAICS code, 624231 Emergency Restoration Services. This initiative, led by the RIA NICS Task Force, a group that originated from the AGA Legislative Task Force, represents a major step forward in securing proper recognition for the specialized and time-sensitive work performed by restoration professionals. So this would help us be able to track some of that work, get a better handle on what things are going, and differentiate ourselves. So important to keep an eye on that. That's a big step, something a lot of contractors have been asking for years. So again, NAICS code 624231, Emergency Restoration Services. So throw your support behind that, get educated on that. And as far as like recent things that relate to that local representation, this is a while back. Yeah, back in early April, the RIA put out a notice, Texas House Bill 4169 is a threat to fire restoration contractors. If you pan out in states where there's issues happening, this is my personal opinion, not the representation of anybody else, but you have things like Florida where there's issues with insurance, storm chasers, and there's a lot of bad actors. But it appears to me the insurance companies can use this consumer protection as a way to drive a narrative with bureaucrats and the public that they get behind, because there's bad lawyers, there's bad public adjusters, bad contractors, and 100% there are bad actors in all of those fields. But there's also bad actors in the insurance world.
Oh, no!
There's bad actors in politics. They can take consumer protection. We are protecting you. But a lot of times what that results in is lessening the consumer options in an open marketplace, which is bad. But also the bureaucracy is, rather than enforcing existing laws and regulations that would solve the issues that they're talking about, they want to add something else, make something else. You know, we're making progress. We're doing something by adding something. And sometimes maybe things need to be clarified or specified, but a lot of times consumer protection a lot of times results in lack of consumer options and choice, which is not good, and ultimately affects them even more. What's the saying by Benjamin Franklin? Those who trade freedom for security will soon find they have neither. And that's a lot of the way bureaucracy goes when it's driven by fear. So this HB 4169 in Texas part of the Business and Commerce Code.
When you start complicating the claim,
one of the things is pre-estimate versus final contracts. Any agreement signed before the insurer performs an adequate damage assessment is classified as a pre-estimate fire remediation contract and is non-binding on the property owner unless certain restrictive disclosures are written into the contract. Electronic filing with the Secretary of State, so it adds additional layers. Every pre-estimate and final contract to a new online system. If you've ever dealt with the government, they're not the best at tracking all of these things or even regulating them. So it's like, we consumer protection, we create this bureaucracy that nobody monitors or enforces the existing laws. So now we'll just give them more responsibilities. And eventually it takes, again, in my opinion, takes away consumer options and creates additional costs that don't actually achieve the goal. So while these can be well-intentioned, they can have negative effects. And this is what RIA said: 5 ways it hurts consumers and contractors: impossible contract promises, slower emergency response, new administrative overhead, and litigation landmines. So the RIA posted on LinkedIn, I think on Facebook as well, that they have initiated meetings and had sit-downs with Representative Liz Campos and are going to continue those conversations, working closely over the next several months to make revisions before the next legislative session, and we'll share updates on our progress. So we're getting direct contact with the people that are in power, having input on these legislation that would immediately affect Texas, but also, anytime something's passed somewhere, then it rolls out to, we should pass that other places as well. So that's just one example of some of the recent legislation, but I would definitely keep an ear out on a local level, regional level, and national level for legislation that could impact contractors, across the board. So in my opinion, that's another feather in the hat of the RIA, that they are stepping up those advocacy and government affairs initiatives that are very important to all of us. So we have a small construction company that specializes in remodeling and insurance repairs out of Puyallup, Washington. Just a disclaimer, none of these opinions shared represent that company, just only my personal opinions. It amazes me, in addition to writing estimates for our company, we place a high emphasis on being able to capture as much data as possible. And I'm always surprised by companies not using fairly easy to use.
What are you, stupid?
Technology such as the 360 geospatial, however you want to call it, but just being able to do 360-degree scans at a job site with tools like DocuSketch. That's what we proudly use, and was really grateful to be able to upgrade my camera at the recent RIA Association. Shout out to the team at DocuSketch. Using DocuSketch on a site, add the room, take the shot. One of the things that is super helpful, in addition to, if you can give me a 360-degree scan and a couple good labeled photos, we can write estimates. So we train our team, have created an SOP and replicated that with people that have no industry experience to create a real consistent process so that our estimator is able to use that data to create good estimates. I write estimates on the side for contractors and other entities that want, detailed scopes, and it's consistently, do you have a DocuSketch or a Matterport or something like that allows me to walk through and do a digital walkthrough. And one of the reasons I really appreciate DocuSketch is those comments, which are the photos. If I label a room, the photos I take while I'm on site and I label those, they're labeled for that room automatically. So when we go to get our ESX for the sketch, and then we go to port over our photos, they're already labeled by room plus the labels we put on while we're on site. Now when I take pictures as comments, they'll be labeled for that room. So we take a little bit of extra time on site, but then we're not having to try to go back and remember why the heck did I take this picture? What room was it in? Or the estimator trying to interpret that. Or if you're sending the data, from another state, to be able to have a consistent process. So just taking a little bit more time while you're on site to communicate clearly with everybody down the line, or even if you're a right run estimator, taking that little bit extra time on site, you sit down and you're finally going to write 4 estimates. You're not having to remember, well, which room was this in? It's labeled, it's by the room, easy to port over. So just want to give a shout out to DocuSketch for the help they've given our business over the years. And then, recently at the RIA by helping us upgrade our camera. A lot of this was about RIA, but it's not even so much just RIA, but that necessity. I would say necessity. It's important to connect locally, regionally, nationally to achieve together what we can't do individually.
'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land.
To say that it's not rose-colored glasses, like locally that's difficult. It's hard to carve out the time to spend with each other and to, come together. Sometimes there's rifts, or this person stole that job, or this person did that. Sometimes they're misunderstandings, sometimes they're legitimate gripes.
F you, pound sand.
And then on the national level, there's plenty of people I'm not the biggest fan of. I'll always try to provide respect to a fellow contractor that's doing the work. I have to remind myself to assume, they're doing what they think is right and doing what's best. But we benefit from having shared ethics, values, education, training, collaboration, and advocacy. It was interesting. One of the clips I really enjoyed from our recent on-site visit with H2O Away, a mitigation contractor water damage contractor out of Lacey, Washington, was a comment that Taylor made about having to be ready to pivot. What would you, going back, say to Taylor of 2017, 2018?
Minimize the distractions. Grab your whiteboard out.
Yeah.
Send everybody else home. When it's 6 o'clock and you're ready to go home, and flop your feet up on the seat.
Yeah.
Take off your Romeos or whatever and eat your dinner and be comfortable. Comfortable doesn't mean growth.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Get uncomfortable.
Comfortable.
Get divorced. No. No. Don't do
Your
that.
wife is holding you back.
Don't do
Get
that.
rid of her.
She's watching
kids. They're terrible.
Send them off to military camp.
Yeah. I've had more access to them over the years and seen what they have done, in their company and personal and professional development. But that commitment to being flexible, to getting your hands dirty.
But really comfortable. All these contractors who go out and it's Chuck in a truck, a Dan in a van kind of guy. They're going out there, and what they're not doing is they want all of these grandiose things. They want a successful, big-scaled company, but they're not willing to be uncomfortable and put in the work that it takes to get to that.
Yeah.
And that's the most difficult thing, which people have to separate it.
Yeah.
Or they don't, and you have to realize, I'm happy with running my 3 jobs a month or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm making my 10 grand a month. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But where it really clicks and where it really becomes peaceful in your mind is when you identify what one of those avatars you are and then lean into it. If you want to be off at 5 every day, do your thing, get off at 5 every day and go to Timmy's baseball practice or whatever, But if you want more, there's only one path to getting that more. And that is late nights, early mornings, designing, trying, implementing, process, all of that stuff. It starts with a good foundation, and then there's so much more after that that you have to do, and you're never done.
Yeah.
You're never done.
This quote came up, I don't remember, maybe I was looking for something for some writing, but this is Wilhelm Reich, "Listen, little man." And just in closing, maybe this will be encouraging to you, but in relationship to your personal and professional development, and perhaps with collaborating with others, you differ from a great man in only one respect. The great man was once a very little man, but he developed one important quality. He recognized the smallness and narrowness of his thoughts and actions. Under the pressure of some task that meant a great deal to him, he learned to see how his smallness, his pettiness, endangered his happiness. In other words, a great man knows when and in what way he is a little man. A little man does not know he is little and is afraid to know. He hides his pettiness and narrowness behind illusions of strength and greatness, someone else's strength and greatness. He's proud of his great generals, but not of himself. He admires an idea he has not had, not one he has had. The less he understands something, the more firmly he believes in it. And the better he understands an idea, the less he believes in it. Because you can insert certain personalities on the local and national level into a lot of those categories. But none of that matters, because at the end of the day, it's you, it's your business, your team, and whether you're making traction towards achieving your goals. And so whether this person's doing that or that person's doing this, what are you doing? What am I doing to, face my fears of being a little man? Rachel Stewart from our industry wrote an excellent book, Unqualified Success. And one of the quotes in there is the first step in being great towards anything is admitting that you suck. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it. But then having that drive you towards, okay, let me get around people that know what they're doing. Let me find out the way to do it right, and the methodology and the science behind what I'm doing, and move forward from that position. I may not know it now, but I can learn it. There's nothing in this industry that we can't learn. You just have to be willing to put in the time and the effort, and maybe the help of the DYOJO Podcast or the books that we've written, and then the people that we expose you to as well, shorten your dang learning curve.
Ba-dum-ba.
The DYOJO is the Do Your Own Job Dojo.
That's what you need for a team to be successful. Everyone to do their own
dang
job.
You do your
dang
job, I'm doing my
dang
job. We have a fighting chance. That's a wrap for this episode. I'm John Isaacson, and it's been a pleasure sharing insights to help you shorten that dang learning curve.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
If we have been helpful, please like,
share, comment, and subscribe.
If you'd like to learn more about our education and outreach efforts, please check out our website, thedyojo.com. My 5 books for the skilled trades can be purchased through Amazon, including my latest, P2T, Preparing to Thrive in the Modern Workplace, which was written to help employers and young professionals build success together.
Well, that's real good, buddy.
Thanks to our guests and sponsors for making this possible. Until next time, keep thriving in the trades.
DYOJO Podcast, over and out.
It's going to be fabulous.